The 90s sure were a good time to be into city builders. SimCity Classic introduced me to the concept. SimCity 2000 had me utterly obsessed to a ridiculous degree. And my interest in the genre was solidified for life with the third game, that being SimCity 3000. Releasing on February 1st, 1999 for Mac OS and Windows PCs, and while it was developed by Maxis like prior SimCities, it was the first mainline entry produced under Electronic Arts, as Maxis became a division of EA in June of 1997 through a $125 million stock swap. And contrary to what some have said, this wasn't EA killing Maxis. They wouldn't do that till later. No, this was EA bailing Maxis out of the worst point in their history, providing a much-needed influx of resources and new management. Maxis had seen an operating loss of nearly $2 million for fiscal 1996, and revenue was dropping by millions year over year. They were largely coasting on sales of legacy SimCity products while trying and failing to turn a profit releasing games in new genres. Sim Golf, Sim Park, Sim Tunes, Marble Drop, Full Tilt Pinball, The Crystal Skull, Marty and the Trouble with Cheese, not to mention big, riskier projects like The Crucible and The Mind Warp, neither of which were ever finished and only burned up resources. The time was now or never for a proper SimCity sequel, so it was no surprise that in 1996 Maxis greenlit development of SimCity 3000 in 3D. That's right, the initial iteration featured full 3D cities, inspired by the three-dimensional cities that were the star of 1996's SimCopter. And this SimCity 3D1000 made its first and, I believe, only public appearance at E3 in 1997. There's very little footage from that show, but I was thrilled to find this snippet of gameplay recently. It shows a fully 3D city with the ability to zoom down to street level, witness Sims going about their day around town, and micromanage individual businesses like never before. There was also a trailer that came out back then showing some brief images of what Maxis ambitiously hoped to accomplish with SC3K, and, well, it's clear to us now that this would never happen, especially not on late 90s PC hardware. But I was blissfully unaware back then, so I was stoked. I was 11 years old and just discovering the World Wide Web, and anytime I was given the chance to hop online, I went to the Maxis website for SimCity news, which led to me finding and printing out these screenshots in 1998 at my Uncle Mark's, who had the best color printer of anyone I knew. As a ravenous SimCity fan, I was captivated by the concept of 3D city building, and these printouts were stuck on my bedroom wall for ages, sparking idealized fantasies of 3D SimCity, lulling me to sleep each night. Ah, sweet dreams. I had no idea it was such a disaster. By all accounts, SimCity 3D1000 was a mistake, an impractical dead end mandated by Maxis executives chasing the 3D game trend, yearning for a financial win for shareholders. The 1999 GameSpot article Simply Divine by Jeff Keighley was how I first learned of the pain. There, Keighley describes the situation of how Maxis higher-ups expected the next SimCity to be in 3D, especially after SimCopter, but the devs knew it was infeasible with current tech. Quoting 3000's art director Ocean Quigley, management wanted the game to be 3D so much that it wasn't receptive to the people who were actually making the game, telling them it wasn't going to work. Yet they were forced to spend a year working on it, resulting in the shoddy showing at E3 1997 deemed by all to be embarrassing. Enter Electronic Arts. After the Maxis acquisition went through in late 97, they wasted no time assigning Luc Bartlett as their new general manager, leading to the entire top-level management, sales, and marketing teams being removed from the company, but also the cancellation of SimCity 3000 in 3D. After playing it for himself, Bartlett saw the writing on the wall and wisely scrapped it, so he brought in EA's Lucy Bradshaw in November 1997 to start over and spearhead production, making 3000 more in line with 2000 in both style and gameplay. As for SimCity creator Will Wright, he wasn't really involved, being admittedly sick of SimCity, and only received special thanks and original concept credits in the final game. It was a running joke around Maxis that whenever the SimCity team would come to ask me for advice, I would go running, said Wright in 2005. They finally gave up. The day they shipped SimCity 3000 was one of the happiest days of my life. They proved that we have a team within Maxis that knows how to build SimCity without my involvement. This allowed him to devote his time to working on Dollhouse, which of course released as The Sims in 2000, so, he did just fine for himself. But yeah, SimCity 3000 got back on track surprisingly quickly with a much more successful showing at E3 in 1998. Maxis had those fat stacks of EA cash now, and they went all out with a fantastic booth right next to EA blockbuster Need for Speed 3. The display featured a floor-to-ceiling city skyline model where folks could walk up to the bottom of each building and play the new version of SimCity 3000, which now looked like the logical upgrade to SimCity 2000 with the same dimetric projection look to it, but with larger maps, upgraded resolution, and more detailed higher color graphics. It may not have been in full 3D, but the preview was a hit with the press and fans alike. And when it finally hit store shelves, over half a decade after SimCity 2000, oh heck yeah, I was absolutely champing at the bit, ogling every inch of this beautiful gatefold box in local retailers until I got my own copy. And also after I got my copy, this box is fantastic. I love how it's mostly show, very little telling, just look at it. You know you want it, you dirty little city planner. Yeah, it's the power trip of a lifetime, just how you like it. Gorgeous graphics, a fresh user interface, classic disasters, real-world landmarks, way more detail all around, and somehow it only required a Pentium 166 and 32 megs of RAM. Good golly, would that be painful. It was not pleasant to run on my 233 MHz AMD K6, I can tell you that. But whatever, my excitement could not be quenched and only increased after opening the box, which reveals the game itself in a nice jewel case on a blue and gold CD-ROM, along with all manner of EA inserts advertising things like Command & Conquer Tiberian Sun, Creative's Sound Blaster line of products featuring their new environmental audio extensions, and this full-color catalog with EA's 1999 lineup. Just a whole slew of bangers from Bullfrog, Jane's, Origin, Westwood, Maxis, and other studios EA flagrantly destroyed later on. More innocent times. Of course, you also get the requisite registration and reference cards, which is really more of a booklet in the latter case, with over a dozen pages of setup and troubleshooting, all the hotkeys, and a section going over notable changes from SimCity 2000. I also have this required reading from the time, a printout of cheat codes and strategies from good old cheatcc.com. It wouldn't be right to leave this out. Then there's the manual, with 106 monochromatic pages of delectable details on SC3K city planning. And while it's still a quality Maxis manual, it doesn't go all out as before. There's no art section or bibliography or developer commentary. That said, it does all it needs to, and then some, in describing gameplay, especially the sections detailing each in-game advisor and their areas of expertise. But playing is better than reading, so let's get into the game itself here. Even 25 years later, that intro ditty improves my mood, prepping my brain for urban planning shenanigans. So, after that simple yet pleasant video, it's on to the main menu with 5 wavy options. Start a new city, load an existing one, begin building with a starter town or a real city map, and of course, preferences, or options if you prefer that option as your preference. And one thing noticeable by its absence are scenarios, which until now were a SimCity staple, and yeah, the SC3K had no scenarios at all on launch. What you do have are those real city terrains and starter towns, neither of which replace scenarios, but they are new to the series. Real cities are what they seem, just blank maps based on real-world locations to build on as you please, and starter towns are maps that have power, road, and zones already laid out in, quote, historically important patterns. Good stuff for beginners to begin with without having to begin the beginning themselves. Of course, we're going to start a new city and go through what's what, which as usual means entering your city and mayor name, choosing your difficulty that determines starting capital and simulation leniency, and 3 starting years, 1900, 1950, and 2000. No more skipping onto 2050. And for the first time, you also get city size, or really map size, with small being the same number of tiles as SimCity 2000 and large doubling that up to 256 by 256. And it's on to the Terrain Editor, simplified from SC2K. You can still randomly generate steepness, water, and tree density, but instead of having individual tools to edit terrain, you now pick from a few primary features up top, like rivers, ocean fronts, islands, lakes, and hills. Finally, you've got a blank map to play with, and a llama telling you what to do. Or really just the tips, hinting at things new players may not know, and basically saying, look at stuff and pay attention. And at this point, it's the usual new city routine. Place a power plant, some roads, and some zones, and then sit back and watch it grow, while beginning to wonder, why the heck are we playing the launch version when Unlimited exists? Yes, SimCity 3000 Unlimited, an expanded edition that released in May of 2000. Instead of expansion packs, EA released this new full game instead, which improves the SC3K experience all across the board. And I'll be showing gameplay from it from here on, as it not only comes with lots of new features, but also content that feels like it was cut from the original to meet a deadline. For instance, scenarios. They're now included right off the bat, as they always should have been. Plus, a scenario editor is now on disk, along with the Building Architect tool, which was available for 3000 and was even advertised on the box, but only as a downloadable extra. It also lets you choose and swap art assets for each city, including terrain, trees, and regional building types. And finally, that Unlimited manual. Unlimited quality. I love a good Wire-O bound book, perfect for keeping open for reference. And anyone remember Simsville? Yet another cancelled Maxis game from back then. It came with this trailer for it on the Unlimited CD. The first and last time I ever heard about it. Back to 3000 though, and that core SimCity gameplay loop. Despite all the bells and whistles, it's still primarily about zoning land in 3 main flavors: residential, commercial, and industrial. With that RCI indicator in the bottom right providing loose feedback on how in demand each zone is currently. And I do mean loose feedback, as there are many more variables to consider, starting with each zone type now having 3 possible densities. Light and dense returning from SC2K, and medium density now slotting in between, allowing for greater control over localized building height and population, and more diverse-looking cities as time marches on and land value improves. I also really like the checkbox for historic preservation, making it so chosen zoned buildings won't change over time, no matter what around them does. Then there are light industrial zones, which can actually turn into farms instead of factories under the right conditions. Place them far enough away in an area free of pollution, and they'll spawn wheat fields and barns and rednecks and things. So, zoning is more complex, but water and power flow has thankfully been simplified. Power now spreads wirelessly across town without power lines, to a degree. For longer distances, sure, you still need raised lines, but locally there's no need to place wires over roads anymore simply to power next-door zones. There's an unseen bubble of power around things now, so electricity spreads organically as you build outward. And then water is similar, but different, in that you actually see the area of effect around pipes as they're laid, and there's no need to individually place pipes under roads since it spreads out more freely. One step backwards, though, is the lack of hydroelectric dams. It's the only power plant that doesn't make a return from 2000. which I can only assume is due to the fact that waterfalls no longer exist. Those are not a thing on sloped terrain anymore. That said, terrain is more complex, with 5 possible slope angles compared to only 1 previously. Those absurdly steep mountainscapes so common back in 2000 are pretty much gone, replaced with rolling hills more suitable for capitalizing on that land value. Though not land value alone, something new affecting growth and demand is aura. A nebulously defined attribute. It follows similar patterns to land value but is less about financials and more about feelings. Positive aura comes from stuff like efficient city services, high life expectancy, socially generous policies, and low crime without police oppression. But nearby businesses that attract crime and create pollution, buildings with a stigma about them, and things that are noisy or smell bad affect aura negatively. Basically, land value is monetary and aura is satisfaction, and the more needs are met, the more readily Sims move in. So yeah, while the old RCI indicator isn't as helpful as it once was, the news ticker, petitioners, and advisors fill in those gaps well. Newspapers are gone, but the interface now features a constantly scrolling marquee with helpful headlines. And plenty of nonsense too. This is a Maxis game, but overall the ticker is a reliable method of seeing what immediately concerns people the most. Clicking headlines brings up the Meet window, which is where you now talk to city advisors, and also business people, neighboring mayors, and the general populace. All kinds of evaluations and opportunities pop up here, from thoughts on taxes and traffic, to petitions for city ordinances, to possible business deals with companies in nearby cities. Buying and selling resources is a constant haggle, with garbage, water, and power frequently on the table. And there are so many dadgum ordinances in this game, it's overwhelming. I love it, but wow, these can make or break your city, so it's nice that your advisors provide feedback on every single one. Of course, it's not always feasible to follow, as some advisors are fiscally conservative no matter what, and others are open to every single tax incentive under the sun, so achieving some semblance of balance is the goal when it comes to budget, and strategies differ moment to moment. Like, it won't be long before folks complain about the city's aura, or the lack of parks and nature or whatever, leading to an extra emphasis on city beautification here. On that note, my goodness, is this a pleasant game to look at? SimCity 3000 holds up gracefully after all this time. Something that would not be the case if they'd gone with the old 3D concept. Nothing compares to such skilled 2D art direction and sprite work, viewable at 4 different angles. And I dig how you can zoom in far enough to see individual vehicles and Sims wandering around. This was such a treat coming from SC2K. Nearly every building, tree, and decorative object that spawns in feels cohesive, like it's part of a whole intended work. Hundreds of buildings weaving together into an urban patchwork quilt of concrete, wood, glass, and steel. And for the buildings you don't like or want to replace, you can easily swap them out for alternatives on the fly. The presentation is enhanced further by all the selectable trees, and how the ground is now a grassy green instead of an off-putting brown. Unless that's your thing, SC3K lets you have the brown all around if you so choose. Regardless though, the fact that cities come together into something so darned pretty despite the chaotic nature of urban growth, it remains impressive, and is only improved by the top-notch sound design and music. The importance of ambient noise in a city builder cannot be understated. Just seeing a bustling urban center isn't enough. I want to be audibly immersed in that rat race cacophony. Then take that lovely art and entrancing soundscape and drop in one of the single best game soundtracks, largely composed by Jerry Martin. Oh, I don't know. There's a magic happening in this game. The whole presentation is unbelievably good. EA knew the soundtrack was stellar too, seeing as they went out of their way to include it on CD in certain bundles. A disc that's become real hard to find, but well worth seeking out. The music isn't just Jerry Martin, of course, there are many talented musicians on here and they're all awesome, but I gotta shout out pianist John R. Burr and saxophonist Mark Russo. They've done a lot of good stuff I got into due to their work here. Really, I got into jazz in general from this soundtrack, along with the Sims OST by some of the same performers. If you've ever wondered why I put jazz music in LGR videos, this is why. On an opposing note, garbage. SC3K introduces waste management to the series, a nasty yet necessary addition to City Sims in general. Trash now piles up on lots unless you have garbage facilities, with the initial landfill zones being the cheapest but most ecologically painful. Eventually, incinerators, recycling centers, and waste-to-energy generation plants become a thing, all with their own trade-offs but disposing of the same sort of crap. 3000 also provides more ploppable buildings alongside the old standbys from 2000. Parks of differing sizes, ponds, playgrounds, stadiums, marinas, and whatnot. Not to mention the huge number of reward buildings, especially in Unlimited. In addition to usuals like the Mayor's Mansion and City Hall, you can earn an Ivy League University, an action-packed amusement park, spooky haunted house, country club, lighthouse, and more that Sims from all over want to visit. Plus the addition of landmark buildings, which are real-life constructions recreated in the game and are free to place anytime to boost tourism. It does limit you to 10 in a single city by default, but either way, landmarks are a nice addition, adding some of that Sid Meier's Civilization-esque alternate history. There are plenty of less attractive yet lucrative buildings too, like a defense contractor and military base, toxic waste dump, casino row, maximum security prison, and so on. All controversial and risky, but all with their own perks if you're willing to deal with the devil. By that I mean the government and corporate sleazeballs, namely Mr. Landgrab of Landgrab Industries. Best to put these in the bad part of town, or what you don't mind turning into the bad part of town. Certain buildings are a recipe for disaster. Speaking of which, disasters, like UFO attacks, finally! Something I always wanted due to SimCity 2000's box art, and now in 3000 UFOs can float around abducting Sims and even entire buildings. In general, I appreciate how disasters like tornadoes, fires, riots, and earthquakes are shown here. The presentation is more believable, and it's more fun than ever watching everything get trashed. Disaster relief is also enhanced with an early warning siren that not only orders Sims inside, but provides extra emergency services on top of the police and fire presence built locally. Though for certain disasters like toxic clouds, power plant mishaps, locust storms, and space debris, there's not much to do beyond watch them run their course and clean up the mess later. Sad to say floods and hurricanes got the axe, though you do get whirlpools, but those don't flood anything, they just kinda suck up boats and smash things built on water. Including seaports, those zones are still around and assist in handling garbage and industrial import-export. Along with airports, of course, a unique zone boosting commerce and tourism. And by the time you have those going, you'd really better have some decent mass transit because there's not a ton you can do with roads. 3000 still only has basic roads. There's no way to control traffic lanes or direction. You can build avenues by placing roads side by side, but all this does is add trees for double the cost, double the pollution, and double the space. Bus stations certainly help, but I've found that passing traffic control ordinances is most effective at helping curb gridlock. Along with trains and subways and subway-to-train transfer stations for both industry and resident use alike. There's still no way to create routes or anything, but that's fine. Just make sure stations are near high-traffic intersections, and it does the trick. Highways, though, I'm not sure they're worth the trouble. They add a ton of pollution, Sims don't always like using them that much, and placing them is iffy as balls. Like, you can't make proper junctions at all. Crossing highways results in a cubic mess. It is possible to overlap highways and create a breed of wonky interchange, but it takes up so much space and looks ugly, so I don't bother. Besides, they're expensive, and cash runs out fast, especially in the early game, which I find more challenging than 2000. There's so much more to spend money on here, and taxes only pay out annually on January 1st, leading to a lot of sitting around waiting for New Year's if you don't plan ahead. But if you do set yourself up for success, you'll be granted one heck of a metropolis to admire. One with, so much slowdown on 90s systems. Heck, even on modern systems you'll be seeing those glass cubes constantly as things load in at higher zoom levels. And sadly, there are no arcologies anymore, and really not all that much endgame content, so to speak. About the last thing that comes along is unlocking the spaceport and blast folks off to Sim Mars. Yeah, it's yet another cancelled Maxis game, dang it! But yeah, cities of over 1 million population are rather doable here, and well beyond that if you're an insane person. Anyone remember Magna Santi? The work of genius/madman Vincent Ocasla back in the late 2000s, with over 6 million resident Sims and 9.172 million total population in a city that looks hellish in the most geometrically diabolical sense. And if coming up with such plans yourself isn't your thing, there were always strategy guides. Not nearly as many as SC2K received in its day, but the official Prima guides in particular were superb, with the 540-page unlimited release being a true feat of comprehensiveness. Or hey, screw strategy, you can always be more of a cheatin' varmint. After all, Cousin Vinny always has something sketchy yet profitable up his sleeve. Plus all the other cheats for manipulating resources means you can effectively turn it into a full-on City Painter sandbox. Crap, and I almost forgot, you can import city saves from SimCity 2000 as well. Nifty on its own, but since you could also import original SimCity files into 2000, that means you can effectively import those here too. 3 generations of city saves in one game. Legacy support is a beautiful thing. As is built-in custom content support, in the form of the Building Architect tool by Maxis with BAT Plus included in Unlimited here. It's a powerful modular building tool where you can use both pre-made and custom props, primitives, and textures to create about darn near anything. I never spent much time using it myself, I never had the patience, but I absolutely appreciated the work others put into it, as seen back then on the SimCity Building Exchange, a massive archive of thousands of custom buildings created by fellow Simmers, along with free DLC from Maxis themselves in the form of building and landmark packs. I loved that old SimCity website. Suffice it to say, I loved the game in general, and I was always excited to see new stuff come along. Like the Walmart edition with exclusive holiday content here in the US, sold as the Holiday Edition in Europe, each with seasonally themed items and events, stuff that was later included in 3000 Unlimited, which itself was titled differently around the globe, like the Deutschland Edition from Germany, also known as the UK Edition in the United Kingdom, Edition Mondiale in France, and World Edition practically everywhere else. It even got a port to Linux in 2000 by Loki Games, a rarity I had no clue existed till writing this. Unlike 2000 though, 3000 didn't release on home consoles, though SimCity DS for the handheld Nintendo DS did happen in 2007. It's reconfigured for dual-screen gameplay, but it really is SimCity 3000 at heart. As was SimCity for iPhone, what seems to have been the full-fat SC3K experience for iPhone and iPod Touch devices in 2009, one that's been long pulled from the App Store and I've sadly never had the chance to play it. Thankfully though, the main PC game remains quite simple to find and play, particularly Unlimited, which sells on GOG.com at the time of recording. It runs pretty well on modern systems as is, but it's worth seeking out some of the many fan patches and updates for things like resolution scaling, edge scroll speed fixes, and whatnot. Seeing this 25-year-old game running in ultra-wide makes this a worthwhile endeavor on its own. But really though, SimCity 3000 is worth revisiting regardless of how you're playing. There's a reason it's one of, if not the very best-selling SimCity game to date, selling over 5 million units by 2007, around 1 million more copies than SimCity 2000, Extra impressive considering how many consoles that game was ported to, and 3000 was primarily on PC. And at this point, I have to admit something. SimCity 3000 is my favorite of the whole series. And that really comes down to its balance of aesthetics, playability, complexity, and overall feel, an aura, if you will. The previous games I absolutely adored growing up, and the later games I found enjoyment in too. Especially SimCity 4 Deluxe. Oh boy, that game is a whole event and we will get there eventually. But there's a certain sweet spot with 3000 that, to me, hits in just the right way for my own tastes. As much as I treasure SimCity 2000, going back to it is like, oh, I remember this, wow, what great memories, it sure was a great game for its time. But with 3000, it's like, taking a hit of something you haven't felt in years, then you're back, and it's immediately like, dude, what have I been doing? This is so good. And I end up just vibing on it for 3 days straight without taking a break. Plus there's the difficulty balancing. Man, I coast along in SE2K no problem, but 3000 requires more conscious effort and planning. And until you get all your city's kinks worked out and the wheels properly greased, it's a tricky experience, and I respect it for that. And again, its entire presentation fuels my soul like nothing else. It's head and shoulders above the later games in my mind in terms of soundtrack and atmosphere. And the fact it was almost a forgettably sterile and sluggish 3D crapfest in 1997 is astounding all these years later. Thank goodness EA stepped in when they did. If that's how good this is, it makes me thankful for EA. What an incredible game. Go play SimCity 3000 again if it's been a while, or grab a copy if you haven't. And if you liked this retrospective, I bet you'd enjoy my others on SimCity 2000 and Classic. Or stick around for LGR things coming up. More retro coverage is continually in the works. And as always, thanks for watching.